Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Kathy. I wanted to do a video on God will remove people or things to bring you something better. So I'll talk about the personal things that I know from people I know, the things they've gone through, and even myself. And you might think about maybe something you're going through right now that doesn't make sense, or maybe something that happened to a family member. And sometimes we don't realize things right away. Sometimes down the road, you look back and you're like, oh, okay, that thing was removed. It could be a job, it could be a person, it could be a car, it could be a house, a relationship. So yeah, there's all kinds of things. So God knows, what's best for us and how things are going to play out. And sometimes we have to go through really hard things to get to the thing that is better. So let's see, I'll talk about how like my dad passed away pretty young. He was 57. He was starting to be sick with Parkinson's, I think a little bit of dementia, and yeah, I think those were the two main things. And he was 57, my mom was 55 at the time, and he just died in his sleep. So yeah, sometimes things like that happen very suddenly. And I've said in other videos, we didn't really have a relationship and all that. And sometimes things are a blessing in disguise. So my mom was taking care of him at that time and also working full-time, I believe. And they had just moved to a different city and had a new house to get situated and all those things. And she's his full-time caretaker. So I know that was really hard and exhausting. And I think, her parents, her dad especially, was pretty sick at that same time. So between my dad being maybe either in and out of the hospital, it was more of the Parkinson's dementia, like him getting lost, like he would go to drive somewhere and get lost and not come home until the next day. He would just sleep in his car, and things like that were happening, which I found out about just recently, when I was going through all of their paperwork and everything, cleaning out the storage and the attic and the shed and all these things that my mom had paperwork and documents and all these things that, I never knew. So at that time, it was really hard on her to be doing all of that. So he passes away suddenly, which was hard for her to go through. But I think she also realized that it was a blessing in disguise. And about a year later, let me think here. Yeah, over a year later, she met another man, and they really hit it off. She moved in really soon, and they decided, they're just going to be together. And they waited a little bit to get married. By this time, she was getting close to retiring. So there were all these factors playing. So anyways, she ends up, they move in. They wait, I think, 4 years. And then when she retired, they got married, moved out of the city they were in to a rural area in Oregon, bought a house with a little bit of property, and they just loved it. So she had a great time with this new guy. And so if she was if my dad was still alive at that time, it would have been, he would have been really into the Parkinson's disease and dementia and all that, and who knows what would have happened. She probably wouldn't have been able to keep working. And so, you can see that I believe, God removed my dad and, took that responsibility and, I don't want to say burden, but for lack of a better word, all of that off of my mom. Excuse me. And then she met another guy and they had a great time. And and they were together for 16 years until she passed. So, hold on one second. So I believe that was one instance where something was removed and something better was put there, if that makes sense. So, and some people might not see it that way. They might think that's the most ridiculous thing. That is so stupid, or that God would not do that. Well, that's what God did. So, and if you look at the facts of it, things were a lot better for my mom specifically. And the guy she married, he lost his wife, I think 4 years before that, and he was really having a hard time with life and all that. And so when they met, they really were there for each other and helped each other, supported each other, comforted each other, all that stuff. And like I said, they were together for 16 years. My parents were together, married for 30, just over 30, I believe. And so, so other situations, I have friends who maybe have been fired from a job or laid off. And, that's awful and it's shocking. And, especially if it's around the holidays, or maybe they just bought a new house or have a different payment every month or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you lose your job or whatever happens. And then after X amount of time, something else comes along, like a better job, which actually a friend of mine that I'm thinking of also in Oregon, she got laid off from a job. I can't remember the time period, but right then she got her severance pay, and it was a really good job, good pay and all that. But, they have a mortgage and all this stuff. And, so she got her severance pay, but I think even before, and she was very worried and anxious about what was going to happen and finding another job, and because the severance package doesn't last forever. And I think even before maybe her first month of the severance pay, she got another job that paid twice as much as what she was making, and she was already making really good money. So that worked out really well. And she's in a field where there's a lot of turnover and competition around the world, and all these things are in play. And I believe after just a little bit of time, they did restructuring and I think merged with another company or something. And she got laid off again, but at the exact time, another company said, "We want you." And then I believe she got a raise on top. And so, so that has been just a ride for her. My goodness. And I do have other friends who have lost their jobs, gotten fired, and then, like I was starting to go into, after X amount of time, something else comes along that's so much better, and they wouldn't have had that opportunity if they hadn't got fired, or they hadn't got laid off with 100 other people, or if the store or the factory or the business hadn't closed down, maybe during the lockdowns and all that stuff. So, and then another situation, a good friend of mine, married, she was married to a guy, they had 3 kids, and things happened. They ended up, after around maybe 25 years of marriage, they got divorced, and she met another guy, not even looking to find anyone or be with anyone. And so they were talking for a while, and her divorce was finalized and all that stuff, and they're both Christians and all that, and they wanted to do right by God. And so they ended up, when they decided to be together, like to pursue a relationship, it was just a whirlwind romance. And yeah, I was in the wedding. They had a huge wedding, beautiful, absolutely, oh my gosh, it was just so great. And just everything about it, their pictures they had done, this, that, and the other thing, it was amazing. So then 3.5 years after they got married, he died. He passed away suddenly. And you can't prepare for anything like that. You have no idea when something like that is going to happen. And that was beyond devastating for her, for his family, for all their friends. Oh my gosh, so rough. Oh my gosh. And being a very close friend of hers, yeah, it was beyond rough. And she, about almost a year had gone by, and she was still really going through it. And she met this guy, I can't remember, I won't go into all the details, but this Christian guy. And to make a long story short, they became friends, but she was still absolutely devastated by losing her husband, who, they planned to be together for the rest of their lives. And so the new guy was very respectful and just, take your time. We don't have to, we can just be friends forever. He was really understanding. And yeah, so a few years went by, I think like 4 years, and they were still friends. And I didn't live right in that town anymore, but I think they decided that they would become an item, but become, serious and what's the word I'm looking for? Exclusive with each other, and which the whole time they weren't seeing anyone anyways, but they decide that. And yeah, after about 4 years, they got married. So, and what ended up happening, I mean, this is incredible, just being on the outside looking in, looking at the situation, because her and her first husband, money was always really tight. And, they had dreams of, buying a house and renovating this and that and doing these things, and having maybe her elderly parents live with them, and all these great plans, and that never happened. And so with the new guy, the new husband, they have been able to do all that pretty much immediately. And I'm sure she doesn't watch my video, but she would probably correct me on things that I got wrong. But to me, it happened pretty quick. He bought a house, a big enough house to where they had plenty of room for her parents to move in, extra bedrooms, all this extra room, and, which she always wanted. And then she had like her own area for her business, actually a couple businesses, like maybe a shed outside, and then also like another inside business, and all these things. I just look at that thinking, her and her first husband, that I'm talking about, not the one she got divorced from, but, they were really struggling, and, they had dreams and wanted these things to happen, but it just seemed difficult for it to all fall into place, and money-wise and finances to line up. But then with the new husband, yeah, and they traveled all around the US. I think they even went to Europe and traveled all over, which she never could do previously. And nothing against that gentleman, and who was a very good friend of mine and my husband's, before he died. But, you just look at things like, wow, she is able to do all these things, and her parents moved in and they've been living there for years now, and they're very elderly. But it's great, because they're right there, and they didn't used to live close by. They lived many hours away. So the things have just lined up, and these are just a couple examples that I'm talking about. So I really do believe that God will remove people or things that to bring you something better. And it can be really hard and devastating to go through, and it can be, just very depressing, just awful. People can get to the bottom of the barrel, and they're just like, I can't even, I can't go on. But just know that God has in mind for us what is best for us, and will work out everything for our good. So yeah, just keep that in mind. If anyone's going through something that's really hard, or maybe you have a friend that's going through something, it could be a divorce, it could be a loss, it could be a job loss, a relationship breakup, many things. So it could even be like a car accident. Maybe their brand new, really nice car got totaled in an accident, but, it protected them and they didn't lose their lives, and maybe they will get something even better, safer, and yeah, all those things. So let me know what you guys think. If you have been through anything like that, if you know anyone going through something like that. I know it can be triggering, and when you really think about it, it can be gruesome, or I'm not sure the other words, but if you think about someone passing and then something better comes, it's like, wow, that's rough. Yeah, I'm just now thinking of a college friend. Yeah, she lost her husband on her wedding day, and a whole story behind that. But yeah, she's happily, I don't know the time frame of when she got remarried after that, but I mean, it's been, many years, 20, 30 years. And yeah, sometimes things are just crazy. And you might even know famous people. There's, I think, Jeremy Camp, the Christian singer. He lost his wife, and he is married now, and I can't remember how many kids they have. And, nothing against the people that died or anything like that, but sometimes God knows, exactly what we need and what is best for us. Like, we might think, no, this thing over here is the best thing I could have in the whole entire world. And God said, no, this thing over here will be even better for you. And yeah, so let me know what you guys think. I know it's a rough subject, and it can just really make your brain go, what? Oh gosh, I don't want to think about that. Which, yeah, I get it. It's taken me a long time to, think about my friend and her new husband now. But then it's like, well, that makes sense, And these are Christians that I know of. And so the people who passed away, they're in heaven. So there's nothing bad about that. All right. Well, let me know what you guys think, and like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment, and I will see you guys in the next video. All right, God bless.